Good evening. How's everybody? Y'all don't look
Hey,
too
Jim.
excited. I'm hot. We turn the fan on. Hey.
I mean, it is election night.
Oh, that's true.
So it's a lot hinging on it this time around. Just a little. Oh, my connection is bad.
Okay, I got the fan on, got a little air moving here. All this hot air from the election heating me up. Oh my. All right. Well, welcome everybody. We'll go ahead and get started. So we'll start like we always do. Let's look at our schedule and see where we are for the semester. All right. Stuff out of the way. All right, so we're at Tuesday, November the 5th. We're going to do the discipline module tonight. Then we have interviewing next week where we'll talk about how to interview for a job and do some personnel kinds of things. And then the following Saturday on the 23rd is our last time we'll be together in Charlotte. And we will do case studies. On Saturday, we have 4 of them, got 2 groups we'll present and we'll award the winner. And then Sunday, we'll wrap up with TD Jakes on leadership. We have a short version and a long version. And so but we'll talk about Jakes. That'll finish us up. All right. So we're doing well. Let me move this out of the way so I can close that. All right. So I want to talk about the work that I saw this week. All right. Let me start out with Andrew. Is Andrew with us tonight? Has he got on here yet? Anyway, I hate to talk about people when they're not here, but Andrew had a wonderful, let's see, post on 6. Except, his is some kind of let's see, his was a. All right, so he had it listed what happens. This is discussion board 6 about the field trip and negligence. He has a wonderful litany of 6 things to do, except he has 2 and 3 switched. All right, so read these and tell me why they're switched according to the law. I've covered this one time. This is a pop quiz for the evening. So read his 2 and 3. This is if you're involved in a minor bus wreck on an activity on a field trip. Tell me why 2 and 3 are backwards according to the law.
I know that in my school district, simply because I've gone through the CDL training and I can drive a bus and it's super fun. Anything like that happens, we immediately, once 911 is called, it's immediately notifying superintendent,
There you
principal of the
go.
school, and then the bus garage, or the assistant superintendent of operations. And once that happens, then the director of marketing and communications takes over those parent
There you
complaints.
go.
And it's not up to us to do that.
That is correct. You do not do that. The information office, the chief information officer handles any of those kinds of things. But back to what Anne Marie just said, the law is very clear. 115C288 says certain things have to report to the to law enforcement and then superintendent and the chief information, the bus garage. That's the litany for the superintendent's purview. The law says it has to go in that order. Has to go in that order. Even if you call the superintendent first, hopefully whoever you get, well, first thing they'll ask is just like I used to when I got those calls. Have you called the police yet? Nope. Well, hang up. Don't call me. I'm second on the list here. I'm not first. And that's important when you go to court, and you will go to court. They'll subpoena those records. And if you got it backwards, then you're going to lose whatever it is in court. And you don't need to be commenting to the press or parents or anybody else. Everything in your district, even if somebody shows up on your campus from the news media, you don't let them on your campus, number one. But number two, you refer everybody in any situation to the public information office. You do not speak extemporaneously ever, ever. But the law is very clear on this one, so you can't get this one backwards. This is a go home offense now. I'll just tell you right now. If you get this wrong, especially if somebody was hurt, if you get this wrong, they'll end your time in school administration, because this one is one of the must do's for the law. All right, so that was that one. All right, now on Bess on number 6, let's see what she had to say. Let's see, is this hers? Yeah, this is Beth. She just leaves it at, she knows the law. Call 911 and then contact the superintendent. That's exactly right. And that's the end of it for your part. That's why I like this. There's nothing else, your part is done when you do that. And you got to know that. Don't assume any more liability than you have to. This is about liability now. Again, I can't keep you from getting sued, but our job is to win. And the way we do that is we mitigate our liability. We don't take on responsibilities that are ours. We know what the litany, the protocol is. Now, her school doesn't have a field trip policy. Then that puts you behind the 8 ball to begin with. If I worked in a district that didn't have a school field trip policy, I wouldn't be doing field trips. Too much liability. For the little bit of gain that you get, I would not do field trips in a district that didn't have a policy that protected the people that are running them. That's just that simple. If it's important enough to do it, then it's important enough to have a policy that protects you. Again, this is about liability. So good catch on Best part there. I can close that one. All right, let's see. A couple of number 5s caught my eye. Beth did a really good job on a juxtaposition of a minor disciplinary and then a major. I like that on hers, and she showed the difference. But what both of them show the need for. Let's see, and I may not have saved it. Let's see, I can close that one. That's Mindy's. And we'll go over here. There's Bess. And she went through, a minor one, and then, one that was very in depth all the way up to exclusion or expulsion. But the part that was important that she pointed out that you need to remember in terms of negligence is on due process. What is the process? Did you follow it? What is the process is substantive due process. What are you supposed to do? Procedural is, did you do it? And the overarching in hers here is the documentation that you have to have. So the question is when you get APs, when you talk to them about discipline, their big complaint is how long it takes. But that how long it takes is you're being careful, you're documenting, you're making sure that you follow the process as prescribed. Now, Katie had one, and this is so ironical. I love this one from Katie. Let me close that one. So good job by Beth. Katie had one. I don't know if I pulled it up or not. I probably didn't. I could go back, but I'll tell you on that one. So Katie had one where the assistant principals, when they were asked what system of discipline do you use, they said we let the teachers determine what the rules and how they run their classrooms, while at the same time they were complaining about how long they were having to do discipline and how many discipline incidents they had to process every day. Do you not think that there's a correlation there? If you let teachers figure out their own disciplinary plan and it's all over the board, or if you let them choose to have a plan, they can also choose not to have one, where everything that pops up, you just send it to the office. And I'm guessing that's what's happening at Katie's school, because the APs are, they're just, I'm spending all my time doing discipline, but you're not controlling it. You're letting teachers sending it all to you because they're not running a plan in their own room. Well, then do you not put two and two together? How do you not understand that? So, I don't. I mean, that makes no sense to me, that they don't get the connection there. Let me pull that one up right quick. Let me go to activity number 6. Let's see if we got it here. There's Katie's. Now I want you to read it like I read it, and see if you agree. So they started out interviewing one. Can surprise me. Most of her day is spent addressing discipline issues at the elementary school. That's your first clue. Something's wrong. You're spending all day processing discipline at an elementary school? That's pretty much your full time. Does not follow a prescribed discipline system. Just are bus related. They don't have a system. They let teachers do their own, encouraged to establish their own system. How do you not understand that one causes the other? That makes no sense to me. That grown people ought to understand that your system is designed to overwhelm the office with discipline referrals. Problems in organizations are either people, process, or product. This is a process deal here. You're not. They're just encouraged to put their own discipline plan in place. Well, obviously some of them aren't, or their plan is we'll send it to you and let you deal with it. Now you say, well, that's what else are you there for? Well, but think about if those kids are wearing out the hallway to the office and the seat of their pants waiting to be processed all the time. How much learning is going on in the building? How much instructional time are they losing? This is a problem. This is a problem. And thank you, Katie, for pointing that out. All right. And then the last one that I wanted to point out tonight was, and then I'll give you all a chance to speak to these. And so the last one that I wanted to point out, if I can move some of this stuff out of the way, was Mindy's. And they have a local policy in her district on cyberbullying, but this came up in one of the others, and I won't mention where. If your district does not have a specific policy on cyberbullying, what takes precedent at that point? State law, the state bullying law, which encompasses cyberbullying. So I've had people say to me, and I'll stop my share, well, we don't deal with cyberbullying because we don't have a policy in our district. Well, that's not true. Yes, you do, because there's a state law that says you do. And if your district didn't adopt a policy that clarified that, that's okay. But that doesn't mean that you don't have to do discipline. I mean, you don't have to do cyberbullying just because your district didn't adopt a policy. It's covered in the state manual. I showed you the laws last time. I showed you the policy where the anti-bullying, the cyberbullying, all those are state statutes. You have to deal with those. Even if your district doesn't adopt its own policy, it doesn't matter. It's covered under the bullying. So this notion that we don't have to deal with cyberbullying if it didn't happen at our campus, not true. Or if it didn't happen on our machine, not true. Or because we don't have a local policy, none of those are true. None of those are true. You got to make sure that if somebody brings that and dumps it on your doorstep, you still got to deal with it, even if your district hasn't adopted a separate policy. The understanding that federal law, state law, then local board policy, that's the litany, that's the rationale. And there is federal and state policies that say you must deal with these things. And you cannot choose to ignore them simply because your local doesn't have one. All right, I'll open up the floor tonight for anybody that would like to respond on any of the points that I've made through the work tonight. Excellent job on the work. Again, I enjoy reading your posts. Anybody have anything they'd like to say in defense of themselves or their school or anybody else or offer a differing opinion? All right. Let's talk about discipline. Now, South Carolina people, you have similar again, but the problem in South Carolina is your stuff's a little scattered and you have to put it together. The beauty of North Carolina is somewhere along the line, Ken Gaddis, I guess, did it, and Ken's long retired. He and some other people, me included, several years ago helped and put a manual together for North Carolina. And so this was in the late aughts, early teens, when we put the first of these manuals together in North Carolina. And I will share that with you at this point. This is not to be sacrilegious, but this is your Bible in North Carolina. It is the single most important document that comes out of DPI by a long shot. And here it is. North Carolina Disciplinary Data Reporting Procedures Manual. All right, so this is overarching everything that you do, including disciplining exceptional children, 504, bullying, what's allowed in schools, what's not, all the parameters, alternative placements, everything is in this manual. It's probably 140, that's 168 pages long, but it covers everything that you need to know about discipline and due process, everything in one handy dandy location. Now, the one thing that it doesn't do, I need to make sure I mention this up front, it doesn't set punishments. That's left up to the local board of education to develop the code of conduct that gives the consequences for these actions. Now, everything has to go into Power School. And everything has to be collected. All the laws say it does. Principal's responsible for that. Now, let me say this. Some of the notions, the wrong-headed notions that people have. Just like with cyberbullying, people have these wrong-headed notions about this that'll cost you your job. Same way on disciplinary data reporting. There is no major, there is no minor. Educator's Handbook is simply a third-party way to collect data in order to artificially manipulate your numbers illegally. And if you get caught, you will lose your job. You are to report everything that happens in your building. You say, well, I don't have to. If I don't suspend them, I don't have to report it. Yes, you do. Suspension is just one of the 17 different consequences. If you even just talk to a kid, if there's a referral on a kid, if you just talk to them, a conference, you still have to report it in Power School. There is no major, there is no minor. Now, why is that? Because since 2014, the Office of Civil Rights report is pulled from Power School, which says we got to know everything that happens in your building. That's federal. We used to file it separately. back in my day, because I was the one who had to file it. But not anymore. It's now pulled out of Power School now that everybody's on the state servers. So you got to understand, if it happens in your building, it has to be reported. This notion, well, I don't know who did it. Well, then you have to file a report on unknown, or the person that did it wasn't a student, doesn't matter, or they were just driving by. If it happened on your campus, you have to report it. There's more perpetrators than just students. Sometimes it's teachers, illegal exclusion and restraint, or maybe they did something. All right, a car is just going down the street in Charlotte. Police are chasing him. He wrecks on the school campus. He gets out. He's got a gun. He shoots at the police. Do you have to report that? Of course you do. Gun on campus. Of course you do. Everything you need to know. They've even got scenarios in here. Now the way it works is you've got the General Assembly passing laws. You've got the State Board of Education passing policies. They both send it over to DPI and they interpret it and say, here's what you do. So you will see references throughout this handbook. You'll see the OCR, the federal reference, but you'll see NC General Statute numbers and State Board of Education, SBE policy numbers in this handbook. Everything you need to know about reporting, discipline, and alternative learning is in this manual. So here we go. Lord, everything in the world is in here. But I'm going to hit the highlights of stuff that you need to remember. Responsible for creating procedures complying with state board policy and the General Assembly. So you'll see that throughout here. That's what it tells you. Also needed to produce reports for the federal government. OCR is in here now. It tells you the value, the authority right here, General Statute, that's the law, says you have to do this, must be compiled. See all these general statutes and these state board policy references that says you have to do this stuff. Now, you can say, well, nobody in my district said I had to do it. Don't be that dumb. And if you are that dumb, don't tell them that you know me, because you have to understand whether your county, whether your district wants to do this stuff or not. It's not up to them if they want to. This is not a want to. This is not an early adolescent issue here. The famous reply of most 12 years old is, I don't want to. Well, you don't get that. You're not an early adolescent. Right here, it tells you what has to happen and what timely reporting is. One day on reportable offenses are persistently dangerous, and you can 2 days on all others. Can't wait to the end of the week. Now, No Child Left Behind, which is the update of the elementary and the 2001 update of the Elementary and Secondary Act of 1966. People think No Child Left Behind was a standalone. It was not. It was an update of ESSA. Elementary and Secondary Act in 2001 said that no child had to go to a low-performing school or a persistently dangerous school. The 9 things that you see on the screen are the persistently dangerous ones. That counts against your calculation as the potentially dangerous school. Those are acts of violence. There are 17 acts of crime and violence, but there's only 9 acts of violence. These are coded as PD, the prefix on these. When you enter them into Power School, they have a PD prefix, persistently dangerous. That counts against your calculation, which is half of 1%, or 1 for every 200, or 5 for every 1,000 in your building. If you have more than 5 incidents for every 1,000 kids, or 1 for every 200 kids, then you have exceeded the limit. You go on a watch list for a year. You get a state audit. If your data turns out 2 years in a row, you're declared persistently dangerous. You lose your job as a school administrator. So it matters. You say, well, I just won't put any of those in there. You get caught not putting them in there, we'll put you in jail. So the calculation is I used to tell them in CMS all the time, the calculation is am I smarter than Dale? Because if he catches me, he's going to fire me and probably charge me. So the calculation is do I think I'm smarter than him? What's that old show? You think you're smarter than a 5th grader? Well, That's, I'm the bell cow. Are you smarter than me? Do you think that I can catch you or not? But see, the problem is a lot of time these acts of violence, the parents will go to the police and file charges separately. Uh-oh. Within 90 days, they can go to the police or the magistrate's office and file charges. Uh-oh, got a police report circulating out there and you haven't reported it at your school? Uh-oh. That shows intent. Uh-oh. So here are the 9 things. Again, you get 1 for every 200, a half for every 100. It's a half of 1%. If you exceed that threshold, things will not go well for you. You say, well, Dale, these things are just random. They are not random. Let me say that again. These things are not random. You have to understand the underlying theory of discipline is antecedent behaviors. The little things, if left unchecked, become the big things. I've got a PowerPoint on antecedent behaviors that I did in 2011 when I was the keynote at the big state conference at Curry in Greensboro. I know they were, I guess they were hunting help for me to be the keynote presenter for DPI. But I have it. I hired a criminologist and we put it together. We're looking at our numbers. But if you have gang activity, you're going to have drugs and weapons. If you allow that to proliferate in your school, if you allow inappropriate touching, if you allow inappropriate displays of affection, you'll have sexual offenses before long. I mean, there's just so many of the little things that become the big things. And so you've got to make sure that you are enforcing the code of conduct as adopted by your district. Now, the state says these are the things that we're not going to allow in your building. And then your local adopts a code of conduct that adds the consequences for them. Now, you need some kind of a disciplinary system. North Carolina, you're supposed to use PBIS. Other folks use other things. But you must have a system of discipline that dovetails into your code of conduct, because your code of conduct dovetails into the state policy manual, which I have on the screen. And so this is what a code of conduct would look like. And what it would have is selected infractions, and it has the consequences that go with them. Most of you use a level or a tier system, and here's level 1, level 2, and here are the infractions: attendance, medication, student dress, personal property, misrepresentation, which is cheating, insubordination, bullying, cyberbullying, and it gives you the range to use on here. So again, the local does not come up with the infractions. The state says these things are not permissible in schools that we fund. We won't tell you what punishment to give. That's up to you. The local then adapts and provides the consequences or the punishment for these. So you have a local code of conduct that translates that. So that's what that looks like. Now, I'll skip to the back here. Let's remember where we were up front here. I'll skip to the back right quick if I can move that out of the way. And these are the things, again, that the state says you can't do in our schools. And they all have a prefix on them that tells you the severity. Right here's where we start. See how it works? PD. That means that was going to count against you. And then you have all these reportables, which are infractions. You must call the police. PDs and ROs. Then you have unacceptable behaviors. Now, there are 4 caveats on UBs that still have to be reported to the law. If it has a general statute number, you see them right here. They put them together finally. I've been trying to get them to do that for years. See these 4 right here that have a general statute, even though they have a UB, if it has a general statute behind it, you still have to tell the police. But see all these different infractions that you cannot do on school grounds, but you don't see any punishment that goes with them. The local has to adopt a code of conduct that assigns the punishment for these infractions that the state says is not allowable in a building that we're paying the bills. So this is what it is. Now, see right here, here's your violent, your 17 acts of crime and violence. But now remember, only 9 of them are acts of violence that count against your persistently dangerous. Now, again, They'll say, well, that guy that was just driving down the street, he's not a student, so I don't have to report it. No, participant, offender type, student from this school, teacher, staff, administrator, parent, county, student from another school, non-student, non-staff, that'd be the guy driving the car, non-professional, other, unidentified, volunteer, or school resource officer. Those are people who can commit infractions that have to be reported. Here are the locations on the school bus now, right here. Bus stop. You notice that? The law is clear. Portal to portal. On the way to the bus stop, at the bus stop, on the bus, at school, back on the bus, at the bus stop, home. That's what we have to, that's our portal that we're responsible for. Now, on the school bus, this is where people hide right here, and this is where you lose your job. News media came on at lunch one day interviewing all these Hispanic families from North Charlotte. They were claiming that all these rapes and sexual assaults had occurred on the school bus. I dialed it up right quick on the way out the door heading up there. Nothing. No reports of sexual assault, sexual offense. I get up there, I go into the principal's office. What's this deal? It's on the news. Well, we reported it. Well, no, you didn't. Show me. Well, right here. We categorized them all as bus misbehavior. No, bus misbehavior is when you're jumping over the seats. A rape that occurs on a bus is still a rape. It's not bus misbehavior. And so what they were doing, they were hiding all their bad stuff under little smaller things. I didn't even let him stay the rest of the day. I fired him on the spot. Anybody that would be that intentionally, oh boy, I tell you, we got thrashed over that one. It was awful. I won't go into any further, but I'm just telling you. On school bus means if you're jumping seats or you're doing something, bus misbehavior. Not you committed a rape and we're going to call it, bus misbehavior. That's not how that works. And that's, by the way, in the manual, it clearly defines that. So here are the places that these things can happen. Here are the consequences that you can give. Let me find the consequences right quick. Behavior types. Here we go. Action types. So when somebody says, I don't have to report if I don't suspend a kid, do you see only out of school suspension on here? No. You can just do a conference. You can do a timeout. We report incidents, not outcomes. What does that mean? If there was a fight, we report that there was a fight, not what we did to the kid as a result of the state doesn't care about the consequence. They don't even put it in the handbook. That's up to you. They're interested in the incident, not the outcome. Data is collected around incidents. So the notion that, I had a high school principal that argued that he shouldn't have to report a suicide because the bell had already rung, although it happened right there on campus in the parking lot before the buses even left the lot. That's such a sad, tragic story. But he wanted to argue because the bell was rung, he didn't have to report that. No. Back up here to the top. You have to report all acts of crime and violence. Again, these count against you. All the statutes right here. Office of Civil Rights Data Collection since 2014. DPI collects it and transfers the data to OCR. So that means everything. Everything. You see, everything has to be. Elementary and Secondary Act. Right here, that's where it started. Didn't start with No Child Left Behind. No Child Left Behind is simply an update to the original act of 65. You got to remember that. What must be reported? Everything. You see this list? Everything. Look, everything. If it happened, you got to report it. If a referral. Disciplinary data use record minor. This is using the system to record all incidents. all the different reports that come out of this, look at them, that come out of this stuff, is used to record disciplinary incidents. Again, we don't report, we don't just collect outcomes, we report. But here's the one right here. This is the one you got to understand. Regardless who determines the data to enter or who enters, the principal is ultimately responsible for disciplinary data. Principals must be thoroughly familiar with definitions of violent crime, reportable offenses. They are responsible for reporting certain crimes, offenses to law enforcement. Now, it's a class 4 misdemeanor if you don't do this, by the way, which means you'll lose your license. And you'll lose a civil case, and you may even lose a criminal case. Best practices right here, be familiar with the reporting. If it happened, you got to report it. If you just understand that, you're 90% of the way there. And here's all the terminology you need to understand. The clusters, reportable offenses, persistently dangerous, unaccepted behaviors, all the things that you have to do. It tells you what all of them are. General guidance. Report an incident regardless of the identity of the offender. See what I was talking about? Doesn't matter. Report all everything's require reporter and offender behavior and action. And you must go through all 3 screens in Power School in order to present to print a official suspension letter. If you're doing a suspension, I've seen a lot of people, they put it in but wouldn't go to the 3rd screen, so it wouldn't generate the letter, or they would bootleg their own letter. I had that happen at Vance. They hired a new leader for new schools that hadn't been trained as a school administrator, and they told her to get the suspensions down. So she just quit putting them in Power School. I can't make that up. Just made her own. She just made a Xerox of her own suspension form and was handing them out. What's the problem with that? Let's talk about that one for a minute. So we had this academy in Charlotte-Mecklenburg called New Leaders for New Schools. And the idea was they could carry a clipboard and follow a principal for a year, and then they could, have an alternative path to a license. No school law, no nothing. So they hired this girl, a young lady. No experience, no degree, no nothing. And told her, we need you to get suspensions down at this high school. What they meant was you need to get teachers out of the rooms, make sure that they're doing their duty, that they're on supervision, that you got your people at the right hot spots, at class change, all the stuff that you do. All she heard was get suspensions down, so she just quit putting them in Power School. For a whole month, nothing. That was when we're still on our own server before we switched to state servers at the end of the month. BPI called me. When they call you, don't send an email. When they call you, things are not going well. Kent Gaddis called me and said, got a school, a high school that averages 170 suspensions a month, about 800 days, and you got nothing. I said, that's probably just a tech problem. I'll run up there. I got up there, no tech problem. And finally, they passed me around till I got to the, her. And she said, well, they told me to get suspensions down, so I just didn't put any in there this month. All right, let's think for a minute. What's the problem with that? What about EC kids? They were getting sent home willy-nilly because nobody was totaling them up. What about attendance? They weren't on the absent, they were getting counted present, weren't in school because they were suspended. How much money did we have to revert back to the state, by the way? How many EC kids did we violate their due process? We had to send back, I think it ended up being $500,000 with penalty fines and money revert. We had to give them $500,000 back. I think we had 11 kids that we violated their IEP. That cost us another $500,000. Just $1 million mistake, not putting them in there and bootlegging their own suspension for them. I can't make that up. I wish I was smart enough. That was $1 million mistake. You don't think that we won't fire you over $1 million mistake and all that legal liability and me having to go to court and just get thrashed in court on a day after day basis with all these, having to go and represent the district in that? Now, let me remind you, when you have to go to court, yeah, your associate general counsel or one of your lawyers is there, but the administrator that's in charge of them has to go too. And you're the one that gets the whip. Trust me. I've still got marks on me after all these years from the whippings that I took setting up. I told you the only good thing was is I could walk through Marshall Park, the back of the Ed Center, and not have to drive over to 4th Street to the courthouse. I had a path wore out going to the courthouse every day. Yeah, you will take a whipping over stuff like this. And somebody down the line has to go home. That's the way it works. There must be blood. You cost the district $1 million, somebody's going home. And maybe more than somebody's going home. Because she simply, she said, I was told to get suspensions down. Now, as you know, I can lose weight one or two ways. I can eat better and work out, or I can reach down and turn the wheel on the front of the scale. Which of those is the certainty? Cheating, turning the wheel on the front of the scale. And so that's what she did. Her idea is I'll make a splash. I'll show them, went from 800 days of suspension to 0 in 1 month. That's kind of stuff is just, you'd say, well, nobody's that dumb. Well, yes, she was, unfortunately. But the whole idea here is you will report this stuff. It will become known if you don't. There are no excuses. There's no loophole. There's none of that stuff. But think of it from if I was a teacher in a building that was hiding this stuff, I'd be livid because you're making me and the kids unsafe. You say, well, if we do it, there'll be a bad PR and there'll be a public uproar. Well, there should be. You need to be handling your business. You're allowing schools and kids to be and teachers to be in unsafe environments. People claim, well, you fire all these people, you're mad at teachers. No, I'm not mad at teachers. I love teachers, and we need to protect them. Now, they need to do their part as well. But we need to do our part to keep them and our kids safe. Hiding what goes on in your building is not the way to do that. It's simply not the way to do that. And if you track your data, you can figure out where your hot spots are. What's a hot spot, by the way? Who knows what a hot spot is?
I'm assuming you mean the locations where these things typically happen.
Yes. Times and locations, class changes, lunch, intersection where kids come, where kids congregate, where you might need more, if you'll run your locator on, you can run reports out of Power School, you can find out where the majority of your incidents are happening. We need more help there. We need to shift our supervision. Our teachers getting out in the halls at class change, all the stuff that we know. How many people need to be in the lunchroom? All right, you got 450 kids in the lunchroom on the first lunch shift. How many adults have to be in there? 10. That is correct. To provide adequate supervision according to the law, you must have 1 adult for every 45 kids. Do you have them? Now, I'm not dumb enough to believe that if we had 100 in the cafeteria at Garinger that they're not going to fight at lunch. But the idea here is we don't want to lose a lawsuit. Yes, we'd like, if we're doing active supervision, we may be able to prevent one, but more importantly, we'll prevent losing that lawsuit for all that money when somebody gets hurt. So the idea, you got to be honest with yourself. You can't fool yourself. That's the biggie to me is you can't fool yourself. If you'll keep up with your data and report accurately and don't have buyer's remorse, when your blood's still up and you've been hit in the fight, breaking it up and all that, yeah, you put down exactly what happened. You go home and you think about it, it's going to look bad the next day. Well, maybe that was just aggressive behavior. Well, no. Don't be going in and changing them. Put them in at the time, collect your statements, put it in what it was, and don't go back later and start adjusting it when the adrenaline is down. And your nose ain't hurting where you got poked in the nose. You need to be accurate. If it was a fight, it was a fight. But I see that you see it all the time. Oh my Lord. Well, we recategorize that as this. No, don't do that. I had one of the principals at one of the small high schools. We had some of those Bill Gates small high schools for a while, I'm not saying it was the dumbest thing we ever did, but it was close. Put a kid up for exclusion for serious assault on a staff member. But before before his whole legal path his court case was exhausted, she went in and changed it to a simple assault without injury, so it wouldn't count against her persistently dangerous. And got caught doing that, and that was the end of her. And then we had one over at the Morgan School. Did I tell you the story with the BMT behavior mod? Got his arm caught in one of the panic room doors and basically pulled his arm out of socket. And then she reported no injury because she didn't want it to persist. And they denied his workman comp claim because they said he wasn't hurt bad and then nothing. I mean, that's kind of stuff we're talking about. Our parents go and file reports on you, and then there's a police report out there, and you've got nothing at your school, or you've reported as something a lot less than what the police are now investigating. You got to handle your business. It's just that simple. You got to handle your business. And it starts with making sure everybody's where they're supposed to be when they're supposed to be. Getting your people to the hot spots and understanding antecedent to behaviors. The little things, if left unchecked, become the big things. So back to our manual, and I'll finish it up. I'm watching our time, and then we'll look at in the PowerPoint for our y'all have seen those before. The code of conduct. You need to find that for your school. Share. Let me get back to this one. All right. And so if you want to know anything about how to enter it, it tells you that everything that you have to do on every screen. Expungement of records after a certain period of time, you have to have a policy on that. The state's got one. You monitor your trends using reports to monitor your trends. That's what I've been taught. It tells you how to do that. It also talks about alternative placements, guidance on entering participants, offenders, reporters, victims. I mean, it tells you there's no scenario that it doesn't cover in here. That's why it's 168 pages. It tells you all that guidance, general guidance, entering behaviors, reporting multiple behaviors, violent crimes and definitions right here. It has all of these, and they are very graphic. I won't read these, but if it fits these, then this is what you report. I mean, you can't get this part wrong in terms of it tells you exactly. Told you about the case at North Mech, right here. They said that she was a willing participant and that it was just mutual. But because she was 16, which is the age of consent in North Carolina, however, she was self-contained EC. She doesn't have the capacity to ever consent. And so that's the same on all these sexual ones. If they are mentally disabled or incapacitated, they don't have the ability to consent, then it's a violation of the law, even if they were a willing participant. Again, age of consent is 16 unless you don't have the mental capacity to do that. It has all of these things right here. There's no scenario that you can think of that they don't cover in this handbook. Assaults on school officials, bomb threats. It tells you everything you need to know. It defines it clearly for you and how to report it. Cyberbullying, again, right here, as defined by these two laws that I went over with you last year. I mean, they pull that one out especially. Discrimination, fighting, gang activity. Everything you need to know about reporting is in here. The types of different harassments here. Reporting fights in a fray. A fray isn't fighting in a public place. 2 or more people in a big place, like the cafeteria or the gym. threats, unacceptable behaviors. Illegal seclusion and restraints. If you do that, we talked about that when we were together last. Especially for EC, state reporting, impermissible uses, physical restraint. Even if you've been CPI trained, if you do it wrong, you have to be reported. Exclusions and restraint, entering weapons and objects in, guidance on those. Reporting actions, guidance on those. Reporting in school suspensions. Okay. Right here, reporting suspensions, alternative learning placements, change in placement, homebound for students with disabilities. Again, goes through all those. We've already talked about disabilities. There's a whole section in here on how to go about doing discipline for them. Right here. If you don't know, it tells you everything you need. Reporting zero tolerance expulsions. According to federal law, those are illegal. Your first case, well, cheating strike Bobby out. The teacher tried to put him out for a year without any due process. That would be, under federal definitions, a zero tolerance expulsion. That's a violation of federal law. Right there it is. It tells you that. Recording reported to law enforcement. Threat assessments, entering incidents with victims, and it gives you all kind of scenarios. Early childhood, preschool, putting kids out of preschool. Anything that you can think of that ever happened in a school is in this. Alternative special program assignments, if for regular ed, and your terms and definitions. Everything that's all the different categories. Everything that you can think of, and they're exhaustively defined. And the law that goes behind all of them. All the infractions. So that's it. That is the handbook. Anything that you ever wanted to know about school discipline is in that manual. Now, South Carolina has the same stuff. They just don't put it in one handy dandy place like this. They've never had a Ken Gaddis at DPI that worked for years putting all that stuff together. And hats off to Ken. I hadn't seen him in a while. But it's all there. You got to report. Now, antecedent behaviors. The little things become the big things. So here's my PowerPoint on that. Identification and prevention of antecedent behaviors, development prevention strategies to assist schools in decreasing violent acts on their campuses. Again, you can tell this is my PowerPoint. I don't do fancy. All right, this is now going on 14 years old. Let's see how close I was in terms of, think back 14 years ago, what were the hot topics were going to be. So this was my prediction 14 years ago. Let's see how close I was. If I did this today, you'd say, well, yeah, duh. Of course, those are the four things that matter now. But I did these 14 years ago, based on the data from Power School, though. Hire criminologists, bullying, cyberbullying, sexual harassment, sexting or social media stuff. That's what that is. We used to call it sexting. It's broader than that now. And gang activity. Now, gang activity doesn't mean just traditional gangs. It means drugs, violence, weapons, that kind of stuff. Pretty close. If I do say so myself, pretty close. And I covered all the federal guidelines, all the definitions, no child left behind, which again is where all this stuff came from, state board, persistently dangerous, explained all that, went through all this stuff. What happens if you're on, the watch list or probationary status for too many of these incidents? Violence prevention, cause and response to violence, psychological, socioeconomic, cultural, political risk factors at school that contribute to violence, overcrowding, poor design, inefficient use of school space, lack of firm yet carrying disciplinary procedures. That's what we're talking about, letting teachers do their own. Student alienation, multicultural insensitivity, teacher and peer rejection of at-risk students, student resentment towards school routines, and lack of proper supervision. That's what our data told us. That's what the literature said. That's what our theorists said. Protective factors at school that can help reduce violence. There you go. Possible anti-violence school measures that you could do. Gang awareness education overview. You have traditional gangs, non-traditional, hybrid, tiger, and criminal enterprises. That's motorcycle gangs. That's tigers. You know what that is. Non-traditional is just a group of kids getting together. They don't have to have a manifesto or rules or any of that stuff. It's their behavior. These are all pictures of that. Here's the ones that we were able to, the local ones in Charlotte. All the different ones. This is actual stuff that we collected. This is actual graffiti. That's Insane Clown Posse. But again, they don't have to have a name, or it's defined by their behavior. All right. Pop quiz, top right. What gang's she in? By looking at her fingernails. One three, blue and white. That'd be MS-13, right? One white, three blue. One white, three blue. MS-13, but anyway, that's the Insane Clown Posse there on the right. And then sexual harassment identification and prevention. Title IX, federal statutes, state statutes, what you have to do. All the references here on that, different kinds of harassment. The policies against, that's before we even had much on cyberbullying. What is sexual harassment? Different forms. Sexual misconduct. Sexting. This is anything online. We kind of call that online or cyberbullying now, but and we have different examples of what is criminal versus non-criminal behavior. I've got some examples here, all these things. And so that's it. But the idea here is there are things that you can do, supervise how you organize, how you enforce the little things, and all the stuff that you're supposed to be looking for. And those again are the hot spot. The sexual stuff, the virtual stuff, the gang, the drug violence stuff. That's the things that become, if you don't handle them when they're small, they'll get away from you. That's the whole notion. Uh, and so those are the four that I highlighted. Then they're still just as relevant then as they were 14 years ago. We still have the same problems. They've come to even more fruition, even more than I thought. But I just used the data for the largest school district in the state, hired a criminologist, and we put all of it together and said, hey, here's the stuff we need to be looking for in our district, that we need to be making sure that we make a priority if we want to stop these violent incidents from happening in our buildings, if we want to protect teachers and kids. Questions that you have for me? Dr. Neal, are you still with us?
I am.
All right. You were principal since I was. Chime in.
I mean, I can't stress enough how important it is that you follow the rules when reporting discipline, because you will get your hands slapped.
And
Can you hear me?
if that's all that
Everybody's
happens to you,
frozen.
you will be very lucky. If all you do is just get your hands slapped.
Yes. And become with, just like CMS, what Dale was going over, that handbook, make sure you are very aware of your district's handbook.
Yeah.
And what it outlines, because you have a lot of leeway as a principal, but you have to be careful that you go by the guidelines that are also in that book, and that you don't stray too far.
Yeah. You'll either have a tier or a level system, and that gives you a lot of a leeway, anywhere from, just like the first case study, Bobby. According to the handbook, you could do anything from a conference to 1 day of ISS with Bobby. And anywhere in between, you're okay. What's not okay is that you don't do anything because you don't want to report it. That's where the problem comes in. Or, again, we talked about this before. Me and Andrew are out back smoking, and Anne Marie catches us, and she sends Andrew back to class and sends me, and then she just pulls her gun out and shoots me, just graveyard dead right there on the spot. She's violated both standards, both arbitrary and capricious. Arbitrary in that she punished me and not Andrew for the same infraction, and me, capricious, gave me more punishment than the law required or the handbook allowed for. I'm pretty sure the local code of conduct in Catawba or Hickory is not, smoking is not a shootable offense. So that's the idea here is, but what a lot of folks want to do is, because they don't want to have to deal with it, they won't do any of it. And that's not acceptable. Capricious is too much, but you can't just ignore it either, because that's when your schools become slaughterhouses and unsafe, when kids aren't held in check, and we let things get out of control, then it's too much. If we can control it at the lower level. The school that I was talking about, where all those assaults and sexual rapes and sexual assaults were occurring on the school bus, when I went up there, I had never seen a school with as much inappropriate sexual behavior, just as a matter of course, just in the halls and in the classrooms. The kids were all over one another. It was just incredible. I had never seen anything like it. Not before, not since.
A principal definitely sets the tone.
Absolutely. Of course, he was having an affair with 3 different teachers.
Gosh.
And was married.
Now, that happens in business and in schools.
Yeah. Yeah. He set the tone all right. He set the tone all right. And so, yeah. Yeah, after we moved against him, I sent him home and we moved against him. Then all that started coming out about his behavior, oh good Lord, it came out of the woodwork then. people had been afraid to say anything, but once he went on suspension, it opened the floodgates. Good Lord. Good Lord. Now, I blame myself for part of that. Why do I blame myself for part of that? I had put an assistant principal there that I was monitoring and was keeping up with. And she was not experienced enough to be able to pick up on a lot of this stuff happening. And I'm the one that put her there. But you can only do what you can do. I felt like he needed some support when I became the supervisor. But I felt like but I put a new AP there, and she just wasn't savvy enough to pick up on all the clues of what was going on. And she was kind of being gaslit by one of the other APs that he was having an affair with. Nothing to see here, or they're just after him. He's wonderful and all that business. And she wasn't seasoned and experienced enough to know what to be strong in her own conviction of the things that she was seeing. That can't be right. That's not right. That's wrong. If I'd have had a better person, we might could have headed some of that off, but I had what I had. So I'll take the blame for that I put an inexperienced AP there to try to help give them an extra AP to try to help shore up things. But, you don't, experienced APs don't volunteer for gigs like that. You have to hire new people. They're not going to do that. When you allot them an extra AP because they're having so many issues, you're going to have to put a new one there. But yeah, they were on the radar already. And then when all that came out, it was just, and then the dam broke and all this, that he was having an affair with, one of the APs and two of the teachers. And so they got in the scrap, and I think their wife came and all four of them got in the scrap. And I thought, I don't think y'all ought to be scrapping with one another. I believe I'd get a frying pan after him. But yeah, that was not our brightest, our proudest moment at CMS. That whole deal with that middle school and up in the university area. That was not a glowing day for us, or during that time. But I really felt bad for those Hispanic kids. What was happening to them was not good. All right. Anybody else have anything for the good of the group? All right. So again, looking at our schedule, we'll be back again next week. And then a week and a half after that, we'll finish up. And so are we going to do anything special when we finish up? We've had our lunch from Jason's. What else are we going to do? What can we do to top that? We got to do special stuff now. We'll think about that. We'll talk about it next week. Our time's up for the evening. I don't want to keep you too late. All right. I'll see y'all next week. I appreciate you being with me. Thank you.
All right. I'll see you
Turning
tomorrow,
that work
Dale.
in. I enjoy reading it. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.